And what's so interesting about it is that they had no plausible way to make a case or explain that we all descend from Adam and Eve. My experience and feeling growing up was that evolution was a unique challenge to the church, a unique challenge to theology. If you know what I'm talking about? What has really helped is understanding church history, to understand where the conflict really lied and how it really developed. And what I found out, and this is a really surprising thing to me, is that evolution was not really the beginning of the conflict. It might have been just the straw that broke the camel's back. The real conflict really began about 500 years ago with the discovery of the New World. If you go to the church fathers, Augustine, for example, writes in the City of God, he considers the possibility of people living on the other side of the globe. Antipodeans, as they call them, right? Because you have a globe, the antipode, or the antipole, or antipode, is the other side of the globe, and they consider the possibility of antipodans, or antipodians, right? I don't know how you pronounce it. And he came to the conclusion, as did all of the church fathers, every single one of them that considered it, is that, well, maybe the earth is a globe. There's no problem with that. They weren't flat earthers. But there's no way that there's people living on the other side of the globe. That would be entirely in contradiction with what Scripture teaches. What do you make of that? Well, there wasn't any reason to consider it because no one really knew how to get to the other side. At least no one in Europe knew how to get to the other side. And maybe the people in Asia didn't quite realize they were getting to the other side. It was just their side. And the people obviously in Americas, they didn't know anything about that debate. So what actually happened? Well, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered, well, he didn't think it was Americas. He thought it was India, right? He discovered a new route to Indians. He was wrong. And he probably didn't realize before he died. He died about a decade or so later. But it slowly started to sink in on everyone that, wait a minute, he didn't actually discover a new route to India. He discovered a new continent. And not only was there a new continent over there was people on that new continent. That was a massive theological crisis. Because remember, every church father who considered the issue and weighed up on about it rejected the idea as completely contrary to Scripture, yet we found out that, in fact, there was people living on the other side of the globe. What happened then? Well, before the theologians really got to say much, you had Cortez over here doing his thing with the Indians in South America or in Central America and Mexico, right? And the conquistadors were not very Christian people, if you want to put it simply. I mean, they were Christian, but we would be embarrassed by the things that they did. Not only just embarrassed, it's really deplorable, the things that they did. They actually said, well, these Indians here, or these Native Americans, aren't actually fully human because they don't descend from Adam. That's what they actually said. Can you believe that? And so therefore we can do whatever we want with them. And so that was part of their theological justification for the conquest of the Americas. Now, what's interesting is how the church responded to that. When theologians back in, that weren't conquistadors back in Europe started to think about this, the church's history is not always perfect, for sure. There's been serious issues that we all know about how this has happened. But what's interesting is what the theological position was that really came up in response to this. Is that really uniformly the church said that that's heresy. That in fact, all those people in the Americas, we didn't think that they existed before, but now we know they do. They all descend from Adam and Eve, and they're equally deserving of God's love and dignity, and Jesus died for them too. And when you think about it, 500 years ago saying this, there was actually a papal statement. And this is also in the middle of the Protestant Reformation. And all of the early reformers also take this view on monogenesis as the doctrine really comes to be crystallized in form. The idea that we all across the globe, we all really do descend from Adam and Eve. And what's so interesting about it is that they had no plausible way to make a case or explain that we all descend from Adam and Eve. It'd be kind of like if we discovered that there were humans like Homo sapiens living on Mars and the lava tubes, and then we come back Do they all descend from Adam and Eve? Who knows, right? I mean, that'd be kind of amazing. That's about the shock to the scientific and the theological world that happened. And then the church came out and said, yeah, we don't know how those Martians arose, except that we do know that they all descend from Adam and Eve. That's how far out on a limb the church really was.